Hello, perceptive Scorpio. There is a quiet truth moving beneath the surface of your life today, and the more honestly you listen to yourself, the harder it becomes to ignore. This message is not here to flatter you with easy promises or tell you exactly what you want to hear. It is here to invite you into a deeper kind of honesty, the kind that asks you to sit with what your heart has known long before you found the words for it. There may be something within you that has been waiting beneath the noise, beneath old explanations and familiar defenses, asking simply to be acknowledged. You have a remarkable instinct for sensing what exists beneath appearances. But even that instinct can become tangled when an experience has carried deep emotional meaning. Sometimes you keep returning to a person, memory, or unanswered question because some part of you still believes that understanding it completely will finally set you free. Yet there are moments when freedom does not come from receiving one more explanation. It comes from realizing that you no longer need someone else to confirm what your own inner voice has already recognized. What has been moving quietly beneath your awareness may be asking you to trust yourself differently. As you enter this reflection, imagine yourself standing beside dark, still water just before dawn. The surface may appear quiet, but underneath it, currents are moving, carrying memories, instincts, grief, desire, and truths that have never completely disappeared. This is where Scorpio's deeper transformation begins, not by forcing everything into the light at once, but by becoming willing to see what has been hidden without judging yourself for having carried it. The cards, if you choose to work with them as symbols, can serve as mirrors for that process, offering images through which you can explore what your inner world may already be trying to reveal. There is a particular kind of healing waiting in the space between holding on and letting go. You may have spent a great deal of emotional energy protecting something because it once mattered deeply to you, and that loyalty may have felt like strength. But ask yourself gently, are you still protecting something that nourishes you, or are you protecting a story because releasing it would mean admitting that you have changed? Sometimes what looks like devotion is simply difficulty releasing an old version of yourself, especially when that version survived something painful by learning to remain guarded, observant, and prepared for disappointment. You may also be looking differently at a connection that once seemed impossible to understand. Perhaps there was sweetness mixed with manipulation, affection mixed with uncertainty, or closeness that quietly asked you to abandon pieces of yourself. Rather than making this about revenge or waiting for someone else to face consequences, let the deeper realization be yours. You do not need another person to confess, explain, apologize, or reveal every hidden motive before you are allowed to move forward. Your intuition does not have to become a courtroom before you can honor what you felt. The truth that matters most may be the one that allows you to stop negotiating with what repeatedly made you question your own worth. And this is where something important begins to return to you. It may not be the person you lost, the circumstance you wanted, or the version of life you once imagined. What can return first is your sense of yourself, the part of you that became quieter while trying to maintain a connection, preserve an expectation, or remain loyal to something that had already changed. You may discover that reclaiming your power is much quieter than proving someone wrong. It can look like no longer checking for a reaction, no longer rehearsing conversations in your mind, and no longer needing another person's behavior to determine how you feel about yourself. Take a breath and let yourself reflect honestly. Who or what have you been carrying because it once meant something profound to you? What would change if you allowed yourself to honor that meaning without believing you had to keep carrying the entire story forever? If you feel ready to mark that inner shift, you can write in the comments, I, Scorpio, choose truth, self-trust, and the courage to release what I have outgrown. Let those words be less of a promise to the universe and more of a quiet acknowledgement to yourself that your emotional life deserves honesty, reciprocity, and room to breathe. You do not have to become harder in order to become stronger. There is a difference between having boundaries and building walls so high that nothing can reach you. Your inner world can remain private without becoming inaccessible. Your heart can be discerning without becoming closed. Think of a door that is no longer left wide open for anyone who knocks, but is also no longer locked from the inside. You decide who receives access, what deserves trust, and what must remain outside because it no longer belongs in the life you are consciously creating. There may be a part of you that has learned to expect a hidden cost whenever something beautiful arrives. You may question kindness, search for motives, or prepare yourself for disappointment before allowing yourself to enjoy what is good. That instinct may once have protected you, and it deserves compassion rather than criticism. But healing can also mean learning that protection does not have to control every decision, and that receiving something genuine does not require you to surrender your discernment. This is where the deeper transformation takes place. You begin to understand that the life you were trying so carefully to protect may have been shaped around an older version of you, a version that knew how to survive, endure, investigate, and hold everything close because letting go felt dangerous. But you are allowed to become someone who chooses rather than simply reacts. You are allowed to recognize that some doors deserve to close, some memories deserve to rest, and some forms of love can only reach you when you stop making room for relationships that require you to disappear inside them. So imagine yourself approaching a threshold, not as someone escaping the past, but as someone who has finally learned what the past was trying to teach. Behind you are the questions you could never answer, the conversations you replayed, the attachments you struggled to release, and the parts of yourself that became exhausted from trying to understand everything. Ahead is not a promise that life will become effortless. It is something more grounded, the possibility of moving forward without abandoning your own truth in order to keep something else alive. And perhaps that is the real message, asking to be heard within you. You are not being asked to forget what happened, pretend it did not matter, or erase the depth of what you felt. You are being invited to carry the wisdom without carrying the wound in the same way. As you begin to trust your own perception, protect your peace without closing your heart, and release what no longer has a living place within you, a different kind of freedom can emerge, one that does not need to announce itself, because you can feel it quietly returning whenever you choose yourself without fear. What you once entrusted to life may begin to feel different when you look at it through the eyes you have now. Perhaps what returns is not the exact person, possession, or opportunity you once wanted, but something far more intimate: your ability to trust your own perception, your capacity to choose without fear, and the part of yourself that became quiet while you were trying to hold everything together. You do not need to be perfect to deserve a life that feels honest and nourishing. You do not have to keep proving your strength through how much pain you can carry. Your existence, your history, your resilience, and everything you have survived already carry their own meaning. As you continue moving through this inner transformation, unexpected possibilities may become easier to recognize because you are no longer looking at everything through the same emotional lens. An opportunity may ask you to trust yourself instead of controlling every outcome, while a meaningful encounter may show you what reciprocity feels like when you are not constantly waiting for the other person to withdraw. Small moments of honesty, tenderness, and emotional ease can become just as significant as dramatic changes. What matters is learning to notice what leaves you feeling more like yourself rather than what simply keeps you emotionally occupied. There may also be something you have been unable to imagine receiving because part of you still associates receiving with vulnerability. Scorpio, you can be deeply generous with your loyalty, your attention, your protection, and your emotional depth. Yet allowing someone to give something meaningful back to you can require a different kind of courage. You may sometimes search for the hidden cost before allowing yourself to enjoy what is being offered. But what if receiving did not mean surrendering your discernment? What if you could remain perceptive while still allowing something sincere to reach you? The seeds you planted through patience, endurance, and difficult self-reflection do not need to become a spectacle to matter. Some of their growth may happen quietly, beneath the visible surface, like water finding a passage through stone. You may notice that an old reaction no longer controls you, that a familiar trigger no longer pulls you into the same cycle, or that you can remember something painful without feeling compelled to return to it. These are meaningful forms of renewal because they show that the past can remain part of your story without remaining in charge of your choices. And still, old patterns can speak with a convincing voice. A memory may make an unhealthy connection feel familiar again, Or an old fear may suggest that protecting yourself means closing every door before anyone has the chance to disappoint you. You may feel the temptation to return to what you already understand simply because uncertainty feels more frightening than repetition. But the deeper question is not whether you can avoid vulnerability. It is whether you can recognize the difference between intuition and fear when both are speaking quietly inside you. You are not the same person who once needed to understand every unanswered question before allowing yourself to move forward. You have learned things about your own emotional patterns that cannot be forgotten, and that awareness gives you another choice. Instead of carrying every old wound as evidence that you must remain guarded, you can let your experience become discernment. Instead of building walls around your heart, you can create a threshold where trust is earned, boundaries are respected, and closeness is allowed to grow through consistency rather than promises. If the emotional weight becomes heavy, pause and return to what you know about yourself now. You do not have to betray your needs simply to preserve a connection, and you do not have to remain loyal to a version of yourself whose only purpose was survival. Your inner world can be private without becoming unreachable. Think of it as a room with a door you control, not locked against the world, not left open to everyone, but opened consciously when someone has shown through their actions that they can enter with care. This is where the practice of receiving becomes something deeper than simply accepting good things. Allow yourself to receive without immediately asking what you will owe in return. Allow kindness to exist without searching for the hidden motive. Allow affection to be real without testing it until it breaks. And when something feels honest, reciprocal, and emotionally safe, you can quietly tell yourself, I am ready. I can receive what is genuine without abandoning myself. That is a different kind of abundance, Scorpio, not the accumulation of everything you once thought you needed, but the richness that comes from knowing what deserves a place within you. You are not moving forward by pretending the past never happened. You are carrying its wisdom while releasing the parts that no longer need to govern your life. The fragments of old experiences can become understanding rather than armor, and the places that once felt like wounds can gradually become evidence of how deeply you have learned to know yourself. You are not required to escape your history in order to transform it. You can meet it with compassion, take what it taught you, and let the rest loosen its grip. And there is another layer to this transformation, the possibility of a relationship that does not ask you to become smaller, more suspicious, or less honest in order to feel secure. Rather than promising that a particular person is destined to appear, let this be about recognizing the quality of connection you are now capable of choosing. Love can be deep without being consuming, intimate without becoming controlling, loyal without requiring self-abandonment. The right kind of closeness will not demand that you betray your instincts. It will give you enough consistency and honesty to let your defenses soften naturally. You may also find yourself reconsidering what belongs in your life at all. Possessions, habits, attachments, and connections can carry emotional history long after they stop supporting who you are becoming. Releasing them does not mean they were meaningless. Sometimes you let something go precisely because it mattered enough to teach you what you will and will not carry forward. Choosing yourself does not require anger, punishment, or dramatic separation. Sometimes it is simply the quiet recognition that your inner life has changed, and certain things can no longer follow you into the space you are creating. So let your heart remain open without making it unguarded. Let your standards remain clear without turning them into armor. Let yourself believe that peace can exist without becoming suspicious of it, and that love can arrive without asking you to surrender your identity. What is truly aligned with your deeper values does not need to be forced into your life through fear or control. You can meet it with discernment, honesty, and a willingness to let yourself be seen as you are. And from that place, make a quiet promise to yourself. I choose truth over appearances. I choose self-trust over fear. I choose relationships that meet me with honesty, depth, and reciprocity. I allow what is genuine to enter my life, and I release what asks me to abandon myself. Let those words settle slowly, not as a demand for life to change according to your wishes, but as a recognition of the person you are becoming, someone who can feel deeply without being consumed by every feeling. someone who can love without losing themselves, and someone who can finally let the next layer of their transformation unfold. Now close your eyes for a moment. Place your hand over your heart and feel the quiet rhythm moving beneath your palm, steady and unmistakably alive. Let each beat remind you, I am here, I have endured, I am changing, and I am ready to meet myself more honestly than I ever have before. Oh, Scorpio, what is unfolding within you is not a small adjustment or a surface-level change. Something much deeper is stirring beneath the visible layers of your life, awakening parts of your strength, your needs, your intuition, and your emotional truth that may have been buried beneath fear, guardedness, old expectations, or the instinct to protect yourself at all costs. You may begin to recognize gifts within yourself that you once kept hidden, not because they were absent, but because surviving certain experiences taught you to keep your most vulnerable power out of sight. And there may be people who do not understand the way you are changing, especially those who were comfortable with the version of you that questioned yourself or carried more than your share. Some may look at your quiet transformation and respond with distance, envy, confusion, or resistance, but their reaction does not have to become your responsibility. You do not need to make yourself smaller so someone else can remain comfortable, and you do not need to explain every layer of your inner world simply because another person cannot understand what is changing beneath the surface. Remember this, Scorpio. Transformation often happens in places no one else can see. The river changes its course beneath the ground long before the landscape above it reveals anything different, and the old skin falls away only when the life inside it has already outgrown its shape. So when certain attachments loosen, when familiar patterns lose their pull, or when something you once fought to preserve no longer feels alive inside you, allow yourself to notice what that change is revealing, rather than immediately trying to reverse it. You do not have to assume that everything leaving your life is a punishment, and you do not have to believe that every loss must be replaced with something identical. Sometimes what disappears creates room for a truth you could not fully hear while you were busy holding on. The deeper clearing is happening within you, making it possible to distinguish between what genuinely belongs in your life and what remained there only because you are afraid of what you might feel after letting it go. There may come a moment when the desires you once carried quietly through difficult experiences no longer feel like distant wishes. They begin to look more like honest reflections of who you are becoming, showing you that peace does not have to mean emotional numbness, and that security does not have to mean controlling every possible outcome. You may realize that you do not need to fight for recognition, over-explain your intentions, or convince someone to understand your worth when your own relationship with yourself has become clear. The connections that truly honor you can meet you differently. A healthy relationship does not require you to investigate every silence, anticipate every betrayal, or keep one hand on the door in case you need to escape. It allows intimacy without possession, vulnerability without self-abandonment, and trust without asking you to ignore what your instincts are telling you. And as you become more honest about what you can and cannot accept, your heart may begin to recognize the difference between intensity and genuine depth. If your heart resonates with this journey, write in the comments, I, Scorpio, choose truth, self-trust, and the courage to release what I have outgrown. Let those words be less a promise to some distant force and more a quiet acknowledgement of what you are choosing within yourself. If this message speaks to something you have been carrying privately, you can also leave a simple like as a personal gesture of recognition. And if you feel someone else could find comfort in these reflections, sharing the message can help it reach them. For now, breathe slowly and allow yourself to feel what is moving beneath the surface. You do not have to force an answer or manufacture certainty before you are ready. There are layers of wisdom inside you that become easier to hear when you stop demanding that everything makes sense immediately. And sometimes the clearest truth arrives quietly, like underground water finally finding a crack through which it can rise. What you are creating within yourself is not simply another version of the life you have already known. It is a different relationship with your own inner world, shaped by greater honesty, stronger discernment, and the decision to stop abandoning yourself just to preserve something that no longer feels reciprocal. You are learning that your sensitivity is not a weakness, your depth is not a burden, and your need for emotional truth does not make you difficult to love. The dreams you carried through silence have not necessarily disappeared simply because their form has changed. What matters now is understanding the deeper need beneath them, the need to feel safe enough to be fully yourself, loved enough to remain honest, and free enough to grow without constantly defending your right to exist as you are. The universe does not need to be imagined as handing you a reward. Sometimes the greatest shift is realizing that you are finally able to receive what you once pushed away because trust felt more dangerous than solitude. You do not need to be flawless before you deserve tenderness. You do not need to prove how much you have survived before someone is allowed to care about you. Your scars, contradictions, private fears, and hard-earned wisdom are all part of the person standing here now, and you are allowed to meet that person with compassion instead of constantly asking yourself how you could have done better. There is also something important for you to notice about control. You may have learned to read every detail, anticipate every emotional shift, or keep your guard close because experience taught you that trust could come with a price. But protection and isolation are not the same thing, and discernment does not require you to close every door before anyone has a chance to knock. Your inner world can remain private without becoming unreachable. Your boundaries can be strong without becoming walls, and your intuition can remain sharp without being governed by fear. The deeper healing may come when you can say, I can listen carefully without assuming the worst. I can love without losing myself. I can trust myself even when I cannot control what another person chooses. There may still be moments when an old attachment calls your name through memory, familiarity, or unfinished emotion. When that happens, pause before deciding that the feeling itself means you should return. Ask yourself whether you are being drawn towards something alive and reciprocal, or whether an older version of you simply recognizes the landscape because it once learned how to survive there. You are not the same person who first entered those experiences. You have gathered knowledge from every disappointment, every silence, every moment when you had to rebuild your sense of self after something changed. Let that knowledge become discernment rather than armor, because your growth does not require you to become harder. It asks you to become more truthful about where your energy belongs. Now imagine an old door somewhere inside you. It is not locked, but it has remained closed because you once believed that opening it would mean confronting everything you had carefully placed behind it. You do not need to force it open, and you do not need to destroy what is inside. Simply stand before it with enough honesty to acknowledge what you already know is waiting there. When the door opens, perhaps you do not find fear waiting to consume you. Perhaps you find memories, grief, old expectations, and versions of yourself that were simply trying to keep you safe with the tools they had at the time. Look at them without contempt. Let yourself understand why they existed. Thank them for carrying you this far, and then allow your present self to decide what still has a place in your life. Behind that threshold is not a promised world without difficulty. It is something more meaningful, a life in which you no longer have to organize your choices around avoiding every possible wound. There is room there for love, privacy, desire, creativity, ambition, tenderness, and uncertainty, because you are learning that you can experience all of those things without surrendering your center. Take a slow breath, Scorpio, and let your shoulders soften. You are not required to become someone entirely new. You are allowing the parts of yourself that were hidden beneath survival to come back into the room. The person emerging is not defined by what happened to them, but neither do they need to erase the past to move beyond it. Today, you are not simply hearing words about transformation. You are being invited to recognize the transformation already taking place in the way you understand yourself. You have begun opening doors that once felt too painful to approach, loosening attachments that depended on fear, and remembering that your deepest strength does not come from controlling every outcome. You are a force of nature in a different sense now, not because you must remain unshakable, but because you know how to move through change without abandoning your essence. Like water finding a passage through stone, you can adapt without losing your direction. Like a seed breaking through a dark layer of earth, Something within you can rise precisely because it was willing to grow when no one else could see it. You are no longer meant to play a supporting role in a story written around deprivation, betrayal, or the fear of being replaced. You are becoming the conscious author of your choices, and that means your power lives, not in making everyone stay, but in knowing what you will and will not participate in. Your words can become clearer, your boundaries more deliberate, and your relationships more honest, because you are no longer asking another person to determine your worth. Listen closely to the quieter voice within you. It may not speak with drama, and it may not give you every answer at once, but it can tell you when something feels true, when something feels forced, and when you are about to repeat an old pattern simply because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. No outside approval can replace that relationship with yourself, and no fear needs to become the permanent guardian of your heart. There is no need for your spirit to live beneath an invisible ceiling built from old experiences. You can grow beyond the identity you created when you were simply trying to survive, and you can allow your emotional world to become larger without becoming less discerning. You can carry your intensity with tenderness, your boundaries with compassion, and your desire for depth without turning every connection into a test. Make this an honest agreement with yourself. You will no longer confuse suffering with loyalty, control with safety, or emotional distance with strength. You will choose wholeness, reciprocal love, and a form of abundance that includes peace of mind, meaningful connection, creative expression, and the freedom to remain yourself. You are allowed to want what is beautiful and lasting, but you are also learning to recognize that what is truly valuable will not require you to betray yourself to keep it. If you feel something inside you awakening as you listen, pause with that recognition rather than rushing past it. If these words feel like seeds landing in a place you've kept private for a long time, let yourself notice which part of you responds most strongly. Perhaps it is the part that is tired of carrying an old story, or the part that quietly knows you have outgrown a passion you once believed would always define you. This recognition does not need to be treated as proof that some predetermined event is about to happen. It can simply be a moment of self-awareness, a point where you hear your own inner truth with greater clarity. And perhaps that is where the transformation becomes real. Not when someone else changes, not when the past finally explains itself, but when you stop needing either one in order to move forward. I honor you, Scorpio, for the depth you have carried and for the courage it takes to look beneath your own defenses with compassion. I honor the part of you that kept going through experiences you did not always understand, and the part of you that is now learning that survival is only one chapter of your story. If your heart resonates with this message, leave in the comments, I, Scorpio, choose to live from truth, self-trust, and the fullness of my own inner power. If you believe something within you is changing, you can press like as a quiet acknowledgement of that choice. And if this message speaks to someone who may be learning to release an old identity or reclaim their sense of self, share it with them so that this community can continue creating space for honest reflection, healing, and growth. Every time you choose self-respect over self-abandonment, you strengthen not only your own path, but the possibility of a more conscious kind of connection with others who are walking through their own transformation. Remember, Scorpio, you do not have to chase what is genuinely aligned with you, and you do not have to return to what only feels familiar, because it once occupied an important place in your life. You can let your choices emerge from clarity rather than fear, from self-respect rather than the need to be chosen, and from the quiet knowledge that your inner life deserves honesty. As you continue listening to that deeper current within you, may you keep discovering that the most profound form of rebirth is not becoming someone else, but finally refusing to abandon the person you have been becoming all along.